Texans had their joint practice with the Lions today, and just like every joint practice, some good things, some bad things, depending on when you checked in on social media. It either sounded like it was the best day ever or the worst day ever or somewhere in between. Did some good things, did some bad things, some things to work on. One of the more notable things to come out afterwards was, I think, CJ possibly giving us confirmation of what the starting offensive line is. He was asked about the level of physical play by the offensive line, and he named 5 names.
Yeah, definitely, man. It's a pop every time, the ball snap. I thought, it starts with Jake. Jake has done a good job IDing things. And him and Lakin are like the first ones to kick it off. Ed's right there. Titus is right there. Taylor, it's a group that's a lot of dogs, man. So I'm really happy that, that we're able to run the ball like we have, because that opens up everything else.
Yeah, okay, so he named from left to right, not in this order, but he said Ersery, Tomlinson, Jake Andrews, Ed Ingram, and then Titus Howard at right tackle. We haven't been able to see as much of Titus just because of either resting him or working other guys in, all of that stuff. But I'm happy with that, with this type and style of play that they've been showing during camp. I think it suits Titus Howard, and I think Titus and some of his size and strength is going to be more of an asset. And some of his, I don't want to say limited athleticism. He's just not a plus athlete by right tackle standards. But for what they're doing in this scheme, I think it's going to be just fine. All 5 of those guys are going to be helped out by the fact that they're getting rid of the ball more quickly. And there's some other things that are going to help the offensive line out. The 2 things I wanted to focus on today are the offensive line, A, and then B, CJ's added responsibilities and how it's going to help him against blitzes and against times when perhaps just by design there's no offensive lineman to block somebody. Not because of a mental error or what have you by the offensive line. Before we move on to some of that stuff, here's CJ on Ersery himself, the left tackle. I'll have CJ start off the first part of this, and I'll pick it up because I've got some film of Ersery from the Panthers game.
I would say really, he's really polished in a lot of areas. He came in polished and naturally, got a good ability to pass protect. I think in the run game, he's got his feet under him, using his power to his advantage, his strength. So you see him moving guys back. You see him, using double teams to his advantage, using his leverage. So I think he's done great in pass protection, but he's taking a step in the run game.
Yeah, and then so this was the play right when CJ turned into a pinball. Ersery did a good job recovering a few times on that. There's only so much you can do to stay attached to a guy when the quarterback is scrambling behind you. But everything that CJ said right there, it's a combination of the polish as a pass protector, but then also the physicality. But he's got great hand placement, and he's got those long arms. But then he also, like this right here, this is where, for huge young offensive linemen handling the speed rush, he does a good job of running guys around the back of the pocket. I get a little bit nervous sometimes when it's against Daniil Hunter or Will Anderson. And in practice, it's hard to tell whether it would have been running him around the pocket or if they could have turned him. But he's improved over the course of 3 weeks, and I think there's a lot of upside with him. Just look at his hand placement. There's a lot of guys that are blessed with long arms but don't know what the hell they're. Now watch this. Just driving them right out of the physicality there. I get really excited about the fact that if your offensive coordinator is stressing the physical part of the game and physicality in the run game. Somebody asked me earlier, hey, Seth, is physicality even a word? Because I hear that all the time these days. And I said, of course I know the answer to that question, which I did not. First used in 1827. So it is indeed a word. I think it's just come back into vogue in these last few years. Come into vogue in the 2025 training camp for sure. So with the offensive line last year, we know that there was not necessarily the same level of physicality in the run game. Part of that's because of the scheme, and I think that part of that is just the emphasis on it and having an offensive coordinator like Caley, who's very much more of a blue-collar guy than Bobby Slowick was. Bobby Slowick was a passing game coordinator or whatever. There's a place for everybody in this world. I like the way Nick Caley is doing it. This is D'Amico on the offensive line today versus the Lions and what he saw from them.
Yeah, with our offensive line, what I saw guys still playing physical up front. We were able to, break some runs there. Chubb, Woody, Jawar, all the backs were able to break a few runs. It starts up front. Those guys played physical, got a hat on a hat finish. The tackles did a good job on the edge, really of handling the twists in the games. Proud of our guys for that, and the communication of picking up blitzes. So anytime you do a joint practice, you'll see different type of blitzes, different type of pressures and adjustments. So I think when you're able to handle that really well and allow your rules to work for you, and you see how sound the protections are, you see how sound we are when we play with a great technique, it works. So we just have to continue to lean into what we're doing, lean into what's being coached and do it the right way every single time, and we'll be really good up front.
And a couple of you guys had comments here that kind of echoed what D'Amico was saying. And from what I could tell today from the reports, this is sounds how it went. I think Brandon said, I heard Ersery and the O-line started the joint practice slow, but settled in later. Do you think the slow starts are a lack of real prep before practices, or could slow starts be a trend? Boy, it's a great question. Yes, that echoes what I had seen and read from Cody Stutz and others. I'll have a quote from Cody up here in a little bit. But that the lack of preparation and not really diving in and digging into what you're going to see, I think that serves a purpose in that what D'Amico was talking about. You got to rely on your rules. You got to rely on communication. All right, something's an issue here. Let's fix it. And in a perfect world, yes, your rules would serve you through everything, but the ability to anticipate it helps a lot. I don't think we should anticipate slow starts, but I'm not saying that can't be an issue or that the slow starts might be a problem. I'm just hoping that whatever wrinkles are going to be ironed out. Some of the fundamentally sound play by the offensive line in these first two games is what really excites me, even with Ersery himself. Guys staying square to the line of scrimmage so that Ersery, for a young guy, he's, okay, I'm helping out with the right guard next to me, but I've got my eye on a guy that might come up in blitz or there might be a potential game. They've just shown much more ability to adjust to movement from the defensive line. Last year, they were one of the leaders in a bad way in the league in sacks given up to games and stunts. So just the twists and everything that D'Amico was talking about right there. They had poor communication. They had poor cohesion and just teamwork amongst each other. I've seen evidence that they're a lot better this year than they were the last time this year during the preseason. Everything's vanilla in the preseason, et cetera, but they're ahead of where they were last year in the preseason. So to get into some of the things that ailed the Texans last year, I want to, this stat, and I believe, yes, this was in Stephen Ruiz's article in The Ringer, and there's a link to that article below. But Stroud was far from perfect in 2024, but he didn't perform as poorly as those numbers imply. Plus, he had arguably the highest degree of difficulty faced by any quarterback in the league. No passer faced more unblocked pressures, 79, according to Pro Football Focus. That, in combination with the Texans' impotent run game, led him to face a lot of tricky situations. He finished second in the NFL in dropbacks on 3rd and 10 plus per True Media. That stat is consistent. Whenever I see whichever stat service says in terms of numbers of second and long, numbers of third and long, CJ just faced more than anybody else in the league. That matches the eyeball test. But this play right here, when we talk about the unblocked pressures, all right, what are your answers for unblocked pressures? The hot routes, which I even hesitate to call them hot routes in last year's offense, because it felt like half the time whoever was supposed to be the hot route didn't even have his eyes on CJ Stroud, because they didn't have that same level of attentiveness. The receivers didn't, in understanding, this guy's blitzing, I got to whip around and get there quickly. So it's not like there were no hot routes. They just seemed like ineffective hot routes. But CJ being involved in pass protection, this is where I hope it pays a lot of dividends. This is a Cowboys game, and Stephen Ruiz had put this in his article in The Ringer. So this is going to be a blitz by the Cowboys. And by design, Micah Parsons right there is going to be unblocked. So there's an answer for it technically in this play call already, because you're going to see up at the top, Joe Mixon right there. That's the hot route. The problem is you got this freak of nature, Micah Parsons, coming off unblocked off the edge, and it's a really hard throw to make to Mixon. And in a perfect world, like something that, say, somebody like Tom Brady would have done, with time at the line of scrimmage and with film work, recognizing exactly what blitz it might be, or at least where the threats were. If you realize this is an all-out blitz, CJ can bring a tight end down into pass protection. He can change the slide. He could tweak the routes a little bit to make that an easier throw. But he just doesn't have it. So you get Micah Parsons coming off the edge. He gets the ball off in time, but he's got to do it like a jump throw there. And that's the part that really what it comes down to is, all right, is CJ good at actually identifying who the real blitzers are, who's mugging? It takes a lot of film work, and it takes a lot of reps and time in the system. This article had a really nice quote from Caley that I loved, because he said, both Texans offensive coordinator Nick Caley and quarterbacks coach Stroud Johnson said that Stroud's football obsession makes their respective jobs a lot easier. Tell me if this sounds at all like Anthony Richardson to you. It does not. They've never had to have a talk with C.J. Stroud about, hey, maybe take your job a little bit more seriously. They don't need to push the QB to prepare harder or watch more film. He does that on his own. He studies ball. Callie told me recently on a cold and gloomy day in West Virginia where the Texans held a week of training camp practices. I was there every day. There was not a cold and gloomy day there. There was a partly cloudy day or two, but it was by no means cold. CJ studies the league. I mean, he watches. It's amazing how much tape he watches. I got really excited about that, even though, look, whatever. Coach is going to say nice things about his players. Nick Caley has been in New England. Nick Caley has been with the Rams with Matt Stafford. Nick Caley being impressed by the amount of film that CJ watches, it reminds me of the stories you used to hear about Bregman, to where I remember we were talking to Lance McCullers once when he used to come on our show, and he said that, like, everybody on the plane after a game would be doing whatever they're doing, playing cards, chatting, and Bregman's just got his eyes glued in front of him to whichever game was on MLB that night. He's just an absolute junkie. And CJ, in this world of hashtag grind and everything, we never know who's actually really working all that hard. Like, CJ's the real deal when it comes to that. I think he's naturally obsessive about it. So I get excited about that. As far as reports from training camp, the other things that are going to help CJ, obviously, are as if he has a run game this year. Last year, the Texans had the 5th most play-action passes in the league. 5th most. They were one of the worst rushing offenses in the league. Listen, I know I say that. The stat nerds will tell you, well, you don't actually have to have a good run game to set up the play. You got to have some semblance of a run game, especially if you're going to have the 5th most play-action passes in the league. They had an atrocious run offense, and then they ended up because they couldn't run. They were in those 2nd and 10s. They were in 3rd and 10 plus, the second most in the league. So any positive report about the run game, I like Cody Stutes at HOUfootball.com. I've got a link to his site down below, too. Does a great rundown of these practices. Today, he said Nick Chubb looked good again. He's rounded into form after looking a little slower at the start of camp. Cody was very skeptical of Chubb to start, and he's come around on him. I don't think Cody was inaccurate in saying that Chubb didn't look like himself. I still don't think he looks like his peak self, but we've seen, especially when there's good blocking in front of him, which he wasn't getting early in camp, you're starting to see what he can do, which is pretty cool. He made an incredible horizontal move to find open space. Oh, wait a second. Let me just go ahead. I'll give you a little extra eye candy here, too, while we're doing this. This is the second touchdown drive. The touchdown drive from the game. He thumped a few Detroit defenders. A few Lions looked like they were ill-prepared if it had been a full tackle situation to stop Chubb. I saw one good run from Dameon Pierce. I pondered recently if he would get more work in the passing game, and, well, he had a walk-in touchdown reception during the joint practice. Woody Marks looked quick and agile in his reps. His ability to move laterally is the best among the backs. He had an explosive carry using his speed to pull away from defenders. Jawar Jordan had a run that would have been an explosive play in a game. British Brooks barreled through a hole on the right side and would have had an explosive game before any Lions could have tackled him again. Again, slow start, but they got going on the ground. So, that theme, as Brandon and several of you echoed earlier, it seems to be recurring, the slow starts. And I'm not going to panic about it right now, if we end up going through the stretch we did a few years ago, remember when the Texans didn't score a touchdown on their first drive for like however many consecutive quarters it was? It felt like the same number of quarters as number of innings that the Astros didn't score a run over that last 3-game stretch here. So I'm going to get going. I'm going to go try to watch a little bit of Sherlock Holmes before the aforementioned Astros take the field. Let's see if I'm just going to grab a couple. Let me grab some. Let me grab some stuff today, or let me grab a comment or two before I get going. Let's see, just randomly. CJ's been mic'd up, having to say that since he got here, make sure you're getting eyes around when it's hot. Yeah, I mean, and that again, the communication, the recognition by receivers of where the threats are. A guy's blitzing in front of me. I better break my route off quick and get my eyes on CJ. You're right. I remember at least one of the clips you're talking about there. So I'm off to Sherlock Holmes. The Texans are off to greatness.